Hey everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can create your very own DIY ombre colour fade crochet blanket. Oh, that's a mouthful. If you love all things crochet and are passionate about the craft, then you have definitely come to the right place. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss out on any of my future crochet videos. Alright, so this video is less about this stitch, which I will show you, but is more about the theory behind how you can make your very own sort of ombre effect using solid colour yarn. Now this works with any stitch that you like, any stitch at all you can do. And you don't have to do a rainbow fade like this one. You can use any yarn you have. It is a fantastic stash buster. All you need is at least 2 colours of yarn. So it is completely customizable for however you want your blanket to look. You can make the bands of colour themselves as wide as you like or as narrow as you like. The only thing that you need to do is make sure that your colour bands are an even number. Not as in 2, 4, 6, as in they are the same as each other. So they're even width bands all the way up. So the same amount of rows. That would have been an easier way to say it. Now, all the information for this blanket here on the table, it's very hard to get all in shot, but for this baby blanket, all the details for it are on my blog. The written pattern, the colours I used, all the information you need is there. So don't forget to expand that box below the video. So click show more, the box will open up and you'll find a link to it down there. All right, let's jump into how you do your very own colour fade blankets. Okay, so the very first thing you're going to want to do is grab your yarn. Now, you can use any yarn that you like and any colours. It doesn't have to be a pastel rainbow. Now, for your ease, it's better to have 2 balls of the same colour. That's just for ease of working. So in my big basket here, I've got my leftovers from my Unicorn Dreams blanket crochet along. And so I've got 2 balls of each colour. Now, if you have only got 1 ball of one particular colour that you want to work in, you can still use it. Grab the yarn from the middle of the ball and the yarn from the outside of the ball, and you can hold them together and work them at the same time. It's a bit fiddly, you might get a bit twisted up, but it is a good workaround. The other thing you're going to need is a hook size that works with your double-stranded yarn. Now, I've opted for a 6mm crochet hook because this is double knit yarn, but you have a little experiment and find what works best for you. You're also going to need some scissors. So for my rainbow fade blanket, I used 2 strands of each colour. Now, if you don't have like a massive amount of colours, or you just want to do a fade between 3 or 4 colours, like the 3 I've got here on my table, you can do that with more strands. So instead of working with 2 strands at a time, like we're going to for this video, if you worked with 3 or 4 strands of the same colour, then your colour fade will be even more gradual and it could look really beautiful. So if you make one like that, definitely tag me and show me because I'd love to see it. So arrange your yarns in the order you want them to fade. The closer your yarns are to each other, the more subtle the fade will be, but that doesn't mean you can't use highly contrasting yarns. This is a stash buster. You don't need to go out and buy new yarn for it. Just use whatever you've got to hand and it will look great. Trust me, it will look great. All right, so with your starting colour, you want 2 strands. So these are 2 strands pulled from 2 separate balls here. And you're going to hold them together and work them as one. So pop a slip knot onto your hook. And for this particular stitch on the blanket I have done, now this method works for any stitch, but for this stitch in particular, you can chain any number you want, then add 3 chains at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a really small sample. So I'm going to chain 18, which is 15 stitches plus 3. So these are my 18 chains. Now when working double stranded, you want to try and maintain a similar tension throughout. It takes a bit of getting used to, but after a while it becomes second nature. You just want to watch that when you yarn over and you're pulling through your stitches, that you are bringing through both strands and you're not accidentally leaving one behind, because that leaves a great big loop out the back of your work. So it may be worth pulling through a bit more yarn. See how I'm holding it together as I pull it through, just so you've got a bit of slack for working. So we're going to be working into the 4th chain from our hook. So these loops on your hook do not count as anything. You're going to count back 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 chains back. And into that 4th chain, we're just going to work a double crochet. Just remember, you've got double loops. Treat them as one strand of thicker yarn. Now those 3 chains that you skipped count as the first double crochet for this setup row, and you're going to pop a double crochet into all the remaining chains of the row. Oh, so straight away you can see, look, I wasn't paying attention. Keep that tension so you've got both loops pulling through. So that's my final double crochet, my very last chain. So you can see it works up quite nice and thick and squishy. Now for row 2 is the pattern repeat row for this. It really couldn't be simpler. So chain 1, which does not count as a stitch, and turn. Now for this row and for every row for the rest of your blanket, we're going to be working into the back loop only. So if you look at the top of your stitch, you can see you have this little V. So ignore this, that's my chain 1. You've got your little V, this is the front loop, this is the back loop here. So you're going to place all your stitches into the back loop only. And those stitches are going to be double crochets. So ignore that chain 1 and work immediately into this very first stitch here, picking up the back loop only. This is what gives that lovely ribbed effect to the blanket. So I've left that front loop unworked, back loop only. So we're going to do this all the way along until our very last stitch, which will for this first row be worked into the top of the chain 3. There's 3 chains that you skipped in that very first row. But after that, you're only going to be working into the top of the double crochet stitches. Now this first one is tucked away a little bit, but you'll pick that up on the return row. So back loop only all the way down until that very last stitch. All right, so I have reached those 3 skipped chains from the row below, and this is the only time you're going to encounter them on this sort of second row. And I'm going to work a double crochet into the top of that chain 3. If you can't find it, just sort of aim in line with the top of your last double crochet. Now I'm going to start doing the colour fade from this point. It is completely up to you how wide you want your bands to be. On my baby blanket that I showed in the beginning, I have 4 bands of a solid colour before I start the fade. But as this is just a tiny sample and I want to show you the methodology behind it, we're going to do it in this final stitch. So for argument's sake, you've got your first colour band as wide as you want it to be, and you want to introduce the first step of the fade. So work your double crochet into the top of that chain 3, but do not finish the stitch. So I'm yarning over and pulling through 2, and then I'm going to stop. Now this is where it gets slightly fiddly, but you will very quickly get used to it. Grab your scissors, and you're going to want to cut one of these purple strands, or whatever colour it is that you're using. Cut one, and then find the ball that that is attached to and remove it. Now bring in one strand of your next colour. Yarn over with, ignoring that cut tail, yarn over with the working strand of that purple, and yarn over, just draw up this next colour. So you've got these 2 loops that you want to pull through. So you need to maintain a tiny bit of tension. I'm just pushing down with my finger, and through those final loops you want to draw through one strand of this purple and one strand of your next colour, like so. Then drop this sort of tail bit here, because that will be in your way. Tuck that out of the way, and you just want to have the 2 working strands, the bits that are attached to the ball, in your hand. Chain 1, turn, and now work double crochet back loop just as before, all the way along, including into this very first stitch here. Oops, carefully does it. See how easy it is to drop the purple? It's kind of brilliant. I'm making all these mistakes on film, really. Show you what to look out for and what not to do. Should we call them intentional mistakes? Let's just pretend they are. No one will ever know. So when you reach the end of this 3rd row, and this is how it will be for every row, the top of this double crochet will be slightly tucked down, but work into that back loop anyway right at the end here to maintain a nice straight edge. Then chain 1, and because we did 2 rows of this solid purple, we need 2 rows of this purple and pink mix. So just keep repeating double crochet in the back loop only. So for my last stitch of the row, I've got my same numbers, so I'm ready to introduce my next colour. So just like before, half finish the stitch, and now the colour we're going to drop is the purple. Oops, destroys entire studio. Get that tail out of the way, and then introduce the next strand of this same pink colour. Just like before, yarn over with the working yarn that's already the one you've been crocheting with, and draw through a loop of the new. This is the only really irritatingly fiddly bit. You want to maintain that tension as you draw both those loops through. then find that tail. You don't want to accidentally start crocheting with it, and carry on for another 2 or however many rows it is that you wanted to do. So you can see by introducing one strand of the next colour for a couple of rows with the old, how you get that fade. Let me just bring in my big blanket. So you can see here, I went from orange to yellow and orange to solid yellow to yellow and green to solid green to green and blue to solid blue. That is the theory behind this sort of ombre fade. You just introduce one strand of the next color. Now that theory also applies if you were using 3 strands of yarn. Each time you come back and you want to introduce the next, you would drop one strand of the old color and introduce one strand of the new. So the same for 3 strands. You just have longer bands in between with a sort of more gradual fade. So I hope you enjoyed this reasonably short, more of a theory behind how you do something rather than teaching you a stitch as such. This double crochet in the back loop gives a beautiful texture, and it's really sort of springy as well, especially when you're working with a slightly larger hook. You get lovely, lovely drape. And as I said, all the details for this blanket are over on my blog. I haven't put any sort of border on it at the moment. I may do at some point in the future, but the edges are so beautifully straight. I'm always loath to put on a border when I have lovely straight edges, because I like the edges to just sing for themselves. But if I do get round to putting a border on this, I will of course come back and update you guys here and show you what and how I have done it. So I don't know if you can hear her in the background, but Steve is shouting at the window and signalling it is time for me to stop filming and start giving her some attention. What do you think of this sort of ombre fade? Is it something you're going to use whilst we're all stuck in isolation? Great way to use up all your sort of part balls. You could make an amazing scrap blanket out of this, and this certainly won't be the last sort of colour fade blanket that I'll do. But I would love to see any pictures that you do of blankets. You can find me on social media. That's the best way to share a photo with me, popping over to my Facebook page or tagging me on Instagram. So until next time, stay safe, stay well, and happy crocheting. Bye.